Welcome to the Rediscover You in Midlife Pod Summit, hosted by The Roller Coaster. My name is Lucy Q. 5 years ago, the emotional turmoil of midlife turned my life into a shitstorm. To make things worse, I had no idea that my chaotic emotions were due to the roller coaster of midlife. I thought I was crazy, and I felt completely alone. I've come to realize that midlife is more than a list of symptoms that we have to endure or cure. Midlife is the beginning of our next chapters. This is our time to be heard, to live our best lives, and to fix those pesky hormones. Join me as I chat with experts and industry leaders about nutrition, bone health, hormones, mindset, healing, journaling, living life to the fullest, and yes, even sex. I'm inviting you to throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride. I was finally able to start my journaling practice back in 2018, but that was only after several failed attempts. Before I was really able to connect with journaling, I had purchased countless blank journals with high hopes of pouring myself onto their pages. Instead of spilling my words of wisdom and insight, I'd find myself sitting there just staring at blank pages, painfully trying to find something to write. That is why I created Your Journaling Journey, a quick start guide to begin your journaling practice today. Your Journaling Journey is a guided journal with daily prompts, gratitude, and affirmations. You can get your copy of Your Journaling Journey today on Amazon or check out the show notes for links. Welcome back to the Rediscover You in Midlife Pod Summit. I'm your host, Lucy Q, and joining me is Laurie Reynoldson. Laurie is a coach to high-achieving midlife women, and she helps them make midlife their best life. Welcome, Laurie.
Hi, Lucy. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, can we start off with you sharing a little bit about your midlife journey and then how that played into how you're now helping other women, and maybe touch on what is our third act?
You bet. I was a commercial real estate attorney for the first 20 years of my career. I was in corporate world. I had my own firm for a while. I was a partner in a small boutique firm. And when I was just on the verge of joining the partnership of a large regional firm, I was sitting in my partnership admission meeting, and they asked me this question: how will your job change if you are lucky enough to be invited in to join the partnership? And I thought about it for a little bit, and my response was, I don't think it's going to change much. My title will change and the way I'm compensated will change. But other than that, it's going to be pretty much the same. And I thought about it on the plane ride home afterwards, and for the next couple of weeks, I just couldn't get it out of my head that I was essentially making a decision based purely on money, and I had never done that before. And so 2 weeks later, I went into the managing partner, and I said, I'm going to make this really easy on the partnership admission committee. I'm going to take my name out of consideration for partnership, and I'm leaving the firm. And I quit my job. I was tired of suffering from a case of the Sundays every week. I was very successful in my profession, but very unfulfilled. I didn't like the person I was becoming in this woman in a very male-dominated, contentious, argumentative profession that I had chosen. But then I found myself like, oh my gosh, what next, right? There's no roadmap to figure out what you're going to do. And, I found myself just kind of wondering, where do I go from here? I've spent all of this time and money going through school and invested it in my career, and now what do I do? And you can Google a lot of things like, how to change the headlight in your car, or file your taxes, or program your smartphone. But when you try and go to online and search, how do I live a more fulfilling life in midlife? There's nothing there. So I doubled down. I mean, I did kind of what I always do, and I read all the books, and I went to the conferences, and I I took some online courses and took a lot of quizzes, like the Strength Finders or what do I do now? And what was interesting to me is so many women who I'm connected with on LinkedIn from a professional setting reached out to me and said, tell me about this career change and how can I do it too? And I realized that my story was not unique, that was happening all over. And if I could figure out a way to do it and help other people do it too, then that would be great. So that's how Act 3 coaching was born. And I call it Act 3 because in Act 1, you're someone's daughter. And Act 2, you're someone's wife and mother. And Act 3 is when you realize you get one shot at this life. And this time, it's got to be about you. So here we are.
Yeah, I love that story. And I want to go back to when you were sitting in that partners meeting. There's two questions I have. The first was, you said that you were going to make this massive change career-wise. Your pay was going to go up and, you're leveling up. Yet everything was going to be the same. Was that's right. Sameness, that point where you kind of went, wait a second, why am I doing this?
Absolutely. I mean, I just started taking stock of it. When I had made decisions at pivotal points in my life before, it was because there was going to be something better, or at least perceived to be something better at the end. And this was really not better in my book. Sure, it was better from a money standpoint, but what it really meant is there were going to be more politics with the firm that I would have to deal with. There were going to be more meetings. And I'd already invested 20 years, and I kind of thought in my mid-40s, do I want to really spend the next 20 to 30 years of my life doing this and
in a boardroom?
feeling the way that I feel, which is not particularly happy or fulfilled with my life. And we spend so much time at work, and it just impacts every other decision and every other moment in our life. And I had to make a decision and try something else.
So when you made that decision, how did the people around you react? Because I'm sure a lot of people were going, what the are you doing?
Yeah. The people in my family, very, very supportive. My colleagues all thought I was bananas. Why would you just give it all up? I mean, you're on the precipice of what every attorney works for. There's this idea that you go to school and you get your degree, and then you grind for so many years until you become a partner. And whether that's as an attorney or a doctor or a teacher or, we've all been kind of, as women, we're conditioned to be put on this path, which is go to school, get a degree, go get a job, work your ass off, get married, have some kids,
It's that dreaded, I call that the dreaded checklist, because
for sure.
I mean, we're relatively the same age, so we kind of grew up. We had our those years in the 80s where we were sold this image of what women were supposed to be. And a lot of that feeds, I look back, it feeds into, the sitcoms that we were watching. You look at something like Family Ties.
Sure.
The mom had like 4 kids, one that popped out, later on in life. And somehow she still managed to have this incredible career as an architect. And she had this big, beautiful house, and life was great. And they had family meals and all of this stuff. In the 80s, we were sold this story of, working women, and you have it all, and you have your family, and you have your kids, and isn't life fantastic? And we followed that blindly, like sheep to slaughter. We started checking those boxes. And then we get to a point in your life and we're like, yeah, that story you sold me all those years ago, that just is not how life is.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. I like to say that I am a recovering box checker because, a former achievement junkie, whether it's the box or the gold star, I feel like so many of us have been working for some sort of external validation and approval. And when we do that, we fill our calendars with things that make us very busy. And, but at the end of the day, maybe not very fulfilled. I think, the other thing that this idea that we were taught in the 80s and the 90s is, oh, you don't have work-life balance figured out? Oh, well, then you just need to work harder, or there's something wrong with you, right? I mean, everyone else is doing it, so why aren't you?
You need a better meal plan. You need a better schedule. And
right.
Like, what mom didn't have that giant calendar on her fridge? I mean, I can remember everyone was color-coded. Everyone had their own color. And then meals had a different color. And all the events were on the calendar. And they were highlighted in the appropriate color. And the meal was put in for each day. And everything was scheduled and planned and organized. And holy crap, when do I get to take a breath? Like, that's what life was.
Absolutely. And when you get to take a breath, then you literally sit down and then somebody, needs, didn't I just feed you kind of a thing? You want more of my time, right? And yeah, so we just head down this path, and then all of a sudden you start asking some questions like, wow, is this all there is? I mean, this is my reward? And so at the time that you finish your checklist, or you get to, wherever it is you think that you're going on your path that we've been set on, then there comes a time where you think, this is it? What now? Oh my.
Yeah. And it's, for me, it hit me hard. And I bottomed out. I hit that sort of depression point. Some women get intrigued and become curious with this phase. And then women fall all within that spectrum. Where did it hit you? Like, I know you made that decision, but sort of emotionally, how did that hit you?
I wouldn't say that I didn't necessarily have a really low point, or I didn't get to the point where, I felt like my whole life was going to fall apart or anything like that. I just I just got to the point where I was fed up with it and I wasn't going to do it anymore. I just figured out that I needed to roll up my sleeves and devote some time to figure out a different path.
And were you married at the time?
I was, yeah. I got married a little later. I got married at 31. We don't have children. That was one of the, before midlife, I had to have a hysterectomy really early on. So it wasn't going to be one of those things where, and we both work a ton. So it was almost like, did we forget to have kids? Or, did we forget to adopt children? Or?
But not everybody, I have absolutely no judgment against anybody, whether they decide to have kids. I have two adult sons, one's 20, one's 23. The 20-year-old is like, I don't want kids. And I'm like, great, don't have kids.
Right.
It's not, it doesn't. I mean, some people do, because again, that was something that was part of what we were supposed to do as, young women, is that was kind of put in there, is that you had to have that. And I think, maybe you could speak to this. Did you find that there was judgment in you? I mean, because not everyone's going to know you had a hysterectomy.
Sure.
Was that level of judgment there?
It's interesting that you say, as young women, we just kind of assume that. And I remember when my doctor told me I don't think you're ever going to have children. And I was like, what do you mean I'll never have children? Because we sort of take for granted that, we're women. And even though maybe I hadn't really thought about, do we want to have kids? Do we not want to have kids? But the whole idea that somebody would like take that away from you was all of a sudden very startling to me. But to your question on judgment, all the time. And what's really interesting is, not so much anymore, but for a long time, as my friends were having children, there was this idea that, Laurie, you have no idea what busy means because you don't have kids. And, so I'm working a job and I'm raising up kids and I'm very busy, but not you. And there's this, as women, we're so hard on one another, right? I mean,
mean girls all the way.
People judge me for not having children. I judge somebody else for whatever. And there's this really interesting camp between the working moms and the stay-at-home moms and the no moms. And what I found in the law firm, which was interesting, was this assumption that because I didn't have to go home and pick up somebody from school, I could just work all the time. My husband and I have kind of this joke that we're professional seat fillers. We get asked to, at the last minute, go to this
Laurie
philanthropy
can do it. She's got nothing to do.
They don't have kids. They're not going to the lacrosse game or the soccer game tonight. Sure, they'll be able to show up and fill the seats at the table. And but we are proud parents of right now just one 4-legged child.
And I've seen
Theo.
pictures of him, and he is. I used to have a yellow lab, and I was I was really hoping you were going to be at home so I could see him.
No,
I'm like, where's Theo?
Yeah, Theo's at home today. But yeah, we've sometimes we've had 2, but we're down to 1 right now.
Yeah. Oh, they get in your heart. Oh, I'm a huge animal sucker, so I'm with you on that one.
He's a very good boy.
So now that you've sort of identified how, you figured your stuff out, and now you're sort of reaching back to help other women. Yeah. Can you share a little bit about how that is that you help women and maybe some of the major themes that you're seeing women encounter so that anybody listening might be able to resonate with different stories?
Yeah, you bet. I think the first thing that I want to reassure everyone is you're not having a midlife crisis. I think that we get to the point where, we're done, like we've been talking about, we've done everything we were told to do. And then we expect to feel differently when we've made it, when we reach the pinnacle of our career, or when we got those kids all graduated and off. And it's not necessarily that we're unhappy. We're just struggling, and some of us, feel unfulfilled, or we're kind of seeking a higher level of happiness than we thought we would have when we got here. And it's, we had talked about a Google search before, and it's interesting because one of the top Google searches related to midlife women is, am I having a midlife crisis? And there's no answer to that. And it's very obvious for men, right? They get the girlfriend or they have the affair and they buy the sports car and, maybe they dye their hair or get the hair plugs. But with women, it's different. They feel a little adrift and a little unsure of themselves, and they just don't know what's next. And so I work with them to reassure them that they are not having a midlife crisis. And we work through a lot of the mindset issues that they have around where they are in their life. There's a lot of guilt associated with high achieving women that get to this point because they have so much already. So why can't they just be happy with that? And they feel guilty for wanting more. And I think that's probably part of that's remnants of the clean plate club when we grew up. Clean your plate because there are starving children in Africa. And so we kind of feel like we've got more than we should ever want. So why do we want more? And then there's this idea that there's kind of a little bit of shame around it, really, because why can't I figure this out? I run big companies or I hold important jobs, and they double down on throwing more time and resources at the problem, and they just feel like they can figure it out on their own. And then, of course, there's a little bit of embarrassment typically because we haven't traditionally talked about these issues. And so they think that they're the only one that's having these feelings. And really, it's almost nearly universal.
It is.
So it is.
It is. And even add in the sort of layer there that, when you're questioning that you want more, you get that mom guilt because it's in some way you think that you're not appreciative of your spouse and your children and that life that you've built together. And that, I think that almost it complicates things because, are you not grateful for your career? Are you not grateful for your family? So then we are amazing at guilting ourselves and beating ourselves up. And that just weighs down.
Isn't that the truth? No question about that. And, I think for so long, our identity is tied to the roles that we've played in the lives of others, whether that is, wife, daughter, mom, boss. And then when the kids move out of the house and, we're not mom, we'll always be a mom, right? But it's not right. Mom front and center, or, we've been married for, say, 25 years and all of a sudden we find ourselves either divorced or the kids have left and we're still married to the same person. And it's like, gosh, I don't even know really this person anymore because we've devoted so much time and energy on raising some other humans. And then there's the whole idea of the boss situation where I've worked for years to build this company and then I sold it. Or like me, you reach the pinnacle of your career and there's really nowhere else to go. And so much of our identity in midlife is tied to these roles that we've played in the lives of others. And there's this external label, right? And then who am I now? Who am I? It's like you look in the mirror and you kind of lose sight of who you are. And then you start asking questions like, what do I want? And what now? And in some cases, women are setting boundaries really for the first time in their lives, where they're kind of rewriting the relationship or the power balance in their life. And they're getting a lot of pushback from the people that have benefited from maybe them not having strong boundaries before, or spouses are inconvenienced because, we're kind of starting to step up for ourselves and take some ownership of our life. And it's an interesting transitional period, and everyone's going through it, whether they want to tell you they are or not.
Oh, definitely. And I never liked the word midlife crisis. I never liked that because it just felt to me. I describe mine as a midlife meltdown.
Sure.
Literally and figuratively, depending on how bad your hot flashes are. But in a sense, I had to, if you're looking at symbolism, I had to melt down who I was so that I could use it to form who I was going to be. I think is more of what it is that you're not completely erasing anything, because let's face it, everything that we've learned over the previous, whether you're looking at 30, 40, however many years, all of those lessons are the foundation of who we're about to become. There's nothing wrong with them. They're not mistakes. They're just those blocks that we're then going to, like if you used to play with Lego, you're just going to take it apart and that horse is now going to become a flower or something else. And I think if that's how we look at it, it completely reframes that whole guilt and uncertainty. And if we tell women, hey, look, chances are you're going to face this, and I'm so happy when you get there. First off, can we start to celebrate this?
Amen, sister. No question.
It's like there's all this, and I've started talking about menopause in that. I mean, my husband's used to me talking about anything, anytime.
Yeah.
But, around some of our friends, and the guys just kind of look at me like deers in headlights. I'm like, well, you do realize this is what's going on, and this is what affects people, and this is what it means. And it's like, can we just start to appreciate what women are going through and find this time to come together? And that's really the purpose of what we're doing here today, is to share in those stories and to share, hey, you're not alone.
Right.
And these are some of the things that I felt. These are some of the things that you felt. And let's just all be together and be the supportive circle that, the mean girls beat apart all those years ago.
Right. And we can leave all the judging in the past,
Yeah.
right? They were, and just link arms and move forward together.
That's exactly what it's all about. Now, you have a special gift that you've put together for the members of the Pod Summit. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, you bet. One of the things that, so it's called the What Do You Want? And it's a guide on helping you get clarity on what's most important in your life. And it's a series of exercises that are going to take you through figuring out what you want, because almost across the board, almost everyone struggles with this, which is figuring out what it is you actually want. I mean, so many of us have been conditioned to, our parents have told us what we want, or spouses, or, a teacher when we were young said, you're very good at this, you should do this for a living, or whatever. And we haven't really, because we've been spending so much time focused on the needs of others, we haven't really spent a lot of time focusing on what do we want. And once you figure that out, I'm telling you, Lucy, that's the key to everything.
That's been it's golden.
It really does. And I will say, even for the people who think that they don't exactly know what they want, you do, because it's that feeling in your gut, or it's the things that you dream about. It's the life you envision when you're sitting around thinking, God, I'm just going to push the reset button and just start over on everything. And for many, it's kind of terrifying to admit that you know what you want, because that self-editor starts kicking in and starts thinking, oh, that's stupid or foolish, or there's no way you can achieve that. What will my friends and family say if I, quit my job and become a plein air artist, or move to Italy, or start a nonprofit, and then of course there's this idea of what happens if I follow my gut and I fail? Because, high performing women and women that were born in the 80s, or, raised in the 80s, we're used to achieving things. Like this whole idea of fail fast and fail forward, that's a new concept. So we're not all that dialed into failing. But the What Do You Want guide is going to help you figure out what you want by sort of kind of backing into it. It's really easy to say, I don't want this. And you know very clearly what it is you don't want. And so we start there, and then we start peeling back the layers of the onion, and it's been very helpful for all of the women that I work with.
I love it. To get your copy of What Do You Want, a step-by-step guide to getting clarity on what's most important, go to nectargrowth.com. That's nectargrowth.com. And by being a part of this Pod Summit, you will receive the first 30 days free. But I know once you get in there, you're going to want to hang out with us a while longer, because we have a lot of fun. It's full of resources, and we're going to be adding more every month. And you will be able to join in our monthly fireside chats. Now, this is where you can connect with women that are just like you, share in authentic conversations, and yes, when we need to, we are going to vent. So make sure you join us at nectargrowth.com. You can find links in our show notes, and you're going to find links in the daily Pod Summit emails. Thank you to all of our listeners joining us today. I can't wait to connect with you in Nectar. And Laurie, thank you so much for sharing your story and your expertise today.
Thank you so much for having me, Lucy. It has been an absolute pleasure talking with you today.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
Love is like